6/15 September, thank you. 6/15. September 15th, this is the City of Brainerd. Personnel and Finance Committee, all presents, everybody's here as well as staff, the press, and Mr. Peringer. And our police chief. Item 1, we're going to move right along because we might get into a little bit of a discussion on the budget, is the approval of bills and transfers of funds. Is there any questions? Mr. Pritchett?
So moved.
Second.
Move to approve, but no, you can't at this point.
Okay.
We just made a motion, so I apologize. Oh, no, yeah, we did just make a
It's good
motion.
open for discussion.
What's that? No, I can't.
Okay.
You can make a comment when we're done. I'm sorry, Mr. Sheeler. Any further discussion from the three of us? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. I apologize, Gary. I didn't even see you come in behind me.
I thought you must have missed it because you were going around the table.
Well, and as you heard, I asked if they have any questions beforehand. Dave made the motion and it was seconded, so that cut you off, and I'm pretty much a stickler for that. So, so what's your comment on the transfer of bills and funds?
On item number 1 up there, the big one is the contractors, C&L. I just wanted to know how much they've been paid so far. And that would be my question. I could raise that up at personal finance. They got a check today, or you're approving $200 and some thousand, but I have an issue with them abandoning the project as on Friday and today, and I'm just wondering, I want to see basically on that, how much we're giving them, and we have to use payment to keep them on
Yeah.
the project. So that'll be my comment.
Yeah, well, I think that's a great comment, but I would think that's more a safety and public works issue, myself personally. We're approving the transfer from the general fund to the public safety fund.
Okay.
So,
I don't know how much you've been paid.
So no, I think you're looking at the approval of bills, which
Yeah.
that contractor was a list on the bills, not
Yeah.
necessarily the transfers.
Right,
You're
right.
questioning the bills.
the bill, right. I will certainly bring up that. Who's first on the agenda tonight, Gary?
You are.
We are, so I'll bring that up. So, and you'll have a chance to in your committee.
Thank you.
It's C&L Contracting.
Yep.
Roughly a $200,000 bill. And you don't think they're, you
I
think
don't know how
they're,
much they've been paid or how much the contract is, but I don't
How
want
much
to
is
get,
retained and when is the
yeah, how much is
deadline?
retained to get them, you pay them 95% of the contract, there's no incentive to give them that.
since we're gonna ask Mr. Hulseth, I'm sure
Yeah.
you'd appreciate a heads up when you get up
I
there.
thought Connie knew how much we've been paid.
No,
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Request for information.
We had this out at this meeting. I did receive a public request for information, and I'll show you what that says ahead of time. Now, this is for the three of you and then each of the council members at the end of the meeting. I'll give you, because it is confidential, but. So, when referencing any of these, if you have questions, please identify them by their reference number, not name, city job title, other employment, or other duties performed, because when going through it, it's easy to determine, or it is easy for some people to determine who these people are. And that information is considered by the attorney to be confidential. Under the personnel policy, this is a provision that was added recently, I want to say within the last 4 years, that if an employee had outside employment, they were to receive approval from their department head, and city council was to be notified of it. Not approval, but notified of it. And so, a question came up from Mr. Sheeler, who else, what else is going on, and we put this list together to make council aware of what else is out there.
Was your question just an FYI, Gary?
Mhm.
Or did you have a specific concern?
He has not seen this yet, so
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just listening and hearing, but,
Yeah, but he wrote the letter, or he made the request.
yeah, I saw that part, and that's why I'm here, just to see that.
I can hand this, he's gonna get this tonight anyway, right?
Yes, sir.
Any questions from either of you, or?
The only thing I guess I would, I'm trying to understand, the reason we're getting this? Is this just to confirm that there's no conflict with their primary?
No, you're being made aware
Just
of it.
being-
That's all you're being, that's
Sounds
all
good.
a
All right.
personnel
Yeah.
policy says. The city
Okay.
council is to be made aware of it.
Do you want these back?
You can keep those, and
Afterwards,
then I'll just give it to the other
Alright.
4 members.
You have to eat it after the meeting.
I already gave mine to Gary.
Okay.
I don't need one. Thank you, I've been notified. I'll sign something if you need it. Okay,
And technically, just so you know, it will be a good exercise. If there's new council members elected in the
Yeah.
future, we can just keep this and maintain it type situation, so
And it
we'll
might
always have
change.
it. Right.
I suppose if some, it would be a good idea to know this, just so,
I mean, they're required to let us know if there's any conflicts of a contract, that kind of situation, but if there's outside employment, let's put it this way, if a guy calls in, if an individual calls in sick, every day there's a snow plow, and we find out that he's got another job snow plowing, that's an obvious conflict.
I always remember when we had a citizen outside of the city of Brainerd call in a complaint on a city police car, and it must have been a marked car, because how would you know? And they were doing some exchange work with some drug task force thing outside of the city of Brainerd. And it was a deal that everybody in the police department was aware of, but we weren't. So it kind of seemed like when they called in, it's like, what is our guy doing on some dirt road? This was southeast of town. And we all kind of stood there and went, I don't know. And I think it was
Shining deer.
Yes. No, it was a daytime deal. I remember they pulled over a truck. It was a truck that was close and 3 of the digits on the license plate. They just pulled them over, and then it wasn't like an episode of Cops. They said, thanks, sorry, we're looking for a guy, you're not it. But the guy got kind of cranked up as to what was the city of Brainerd guy doing out there. So I can see how this would certainly be something of that kind of value, FYI type of deal. Okay. We're going to move on from that unless somebody else has anything they want to discuss. We're on to the exciting part, the 2015 preliminary levy. I'm going to just turn it over to staff for a minute just to see if they have any. I mean, this is obvious what it is. We're on TV if you want to just mention what it is.
It was pretty much detailed out in the memo based on the budget workshop that we had on Monday night of kind of clear direction that the council had given. And then there were some other things that maybe clear direction hadn't been given, but maybe there were some compromises such as the other, like for example, the transfer for capital savings was $50,000 in the preliminary budget. There was talk like, yes, we need it, no, we don't, that kind of thing. So maybe a compromise would be cut it in half. And so if we take all of that into account, which was listed in the memo, then we basically have a deficit of $563,000, and then that would be an increase of levy of 12.66%. That was what this is in guidance. Dale had a list of stuff that he put together over the weekend, which some of it maybe we should discuss as we go through it. For example, like the nuisance request, the $10,500 increase, that basically there's revenue offsetting that expense. Instead of having it being tracked in a different fund, it all came into the general fund, and so that's why you see that increase in that expense, but there's also a corresponding increase in the revenue as well.
And then additionally, at the meeting last week, Councilmember Matt indicated she put her comments in writing, and she did that, and we included that, so there was some ambiguity, as Connie mentioned, as far as how to implement those or not implement those, and so today's meeting is to have additional discussion. We do have a draft resolution prepared. If this board or this committee makes a recommendation, we can modify it and then bring it up for the full council to review and approve possibly tonight. As a reminder, for the last time, not really, this is a preliminary levy, and you can, going forward, we are required to set a preliminary levy by September 30th, which is a change from historically it's always been the 15th of September. This year is a change, but going forward, you can lower the levy from what you set the preliminary levy at, but you cannot increase it per se. So that's always the important factor here. So maybe tonight the council decides that there's still a couple stickling points. I will tell you that I took a call from Gary at 4 o'clock tonight saying he wanted to have an item that for the police department, that's not even on the police department's budget tonight, because he did a ride-along over the weekend, thought it would be very helpful, and that hasn't even been talked about, so there's some numbers. This is not the final set of numbers for the separate means. We still need, for example, we don't have our health insurance numbers back. We budgeted 20% increase, which equals $100,000. They went out for bids this year. We expect them early next week. And a 15% increase versus a 20% increase means a saving of $25,000. So there's some alternatives out there. We put 20,000 in there, or sorry, 20%, 100,000, because we were told that was essentially the most that could happen. Now that's one part of that, health insurance wise. Come December, under open enrollment, if all employees that were single went to family, you'd have a higher cost, and we can't project that item either. But we're going with known costs the best we can, and we present those in the budget based upon history. So now we'd be willing to answer any questions.
Mr. Parks.
I just wanted to explain the rationale behind the numbers that I sent. My thought was that these are things that we could look at after we set a preliminary budget, because without knowing the background behind those things, I didn't know if they really could be cut or not. But I went through, and every place there was an increase, I jotted those down. But my thought was that if those things could be cut, then at least they're listed there. And if, for example, the 10,000 you just mentioned, if they can't be cut, or they're shown in a different way, then perhaps then we can't do anything with it. The other thing that I did make a change on was the employment of a computer person. I just found out over the weekend that the city of Nisswa, Baxter, and I think Staples have contracted with CTCIT over the, I don't know how long ago, but recently. And upon discussion, it sounds like we could have a contract for probably under 30,000, and we wouldn't have to pay for any benefits. So it's something that we could leave it in there as it is, but through further discussion we could find out whether that's something that would work or wouldn't work. And I thought that Patrick might get a call today from one of the salesmen. It's I don't know if it's CTC or if it's 7 Sigma that is offering that, but at any rate, it's a company that my son is involved with. So if it comes to a discussion, I will have to excuse myself or abstain. But I think it's worthwhile. I know that Mary and I had a discussion a long time ago about possibly working with the county or Baxter, or maybe even the school district, and that didn't seem like it would pan out. But I think there's some possibilities. All of the other items on there were just increases that were requested by the individual departments, and that's the area that I think needs to have more discussion somewhere down the line. So again, I put those in there thinking that these are things we can look at after we approve a levy.
And that's why you said you'd recommend looking at these after the levy.
Yes.
My only question is, when you're looking at this, if we kind of say, okay, this is what we recommend, that's a lower level. We can't then add any of that stuff.
Correct. Yes.
Just
Yes.
trying to clarify that.
Yeah. I'm done.
You got
No,
John?
and if I could just, a little bit, so when we proposed the additional staff person, I think it was the July meeting, we went into August meeting, we talked about it some more, and we took the comments we received. We did have communications with the county, Baxter. We didn't have as much conversations with the school because they just didn't correlate, and either with the community college. And so we were down to, and we have been told, I mean, I don't recall the memos, just from our conversation, just the last 20 minutes, but we were also putting together an RFP to look at a part-time consultant that could do that, but it sounds like there might be an RFP out there that I haven't heard about, so that we'll be able to piggyback on their options.
Yeah, and my goal was to contact you and see if you could call Gordon today to find out what they have, but
And we know
We
the
still have
county
time for that.
does contract with,
the same company.
I thought it was actually a different, what's the, Marco?
Oh,
I was
they
told they
might.
contract with Marco, and they got like $100,000 contract.
Yeah.
Well,
They also have employees.
They have, yeah, 5 or 6.
Yeah, fairly substantial
Plus-
IT staff.
And so what we were looking at is what they contract for. We didn't, that's more of a help desk.
Yeah.
Answering hot calls, and that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about an individual.
Right, and that's
Come
what this
into,
would be.
if Connie's computer, if my computer crashes, they can come right to my computer and help me
Right.
rather than me sitting there and fumbling around.
Right, and a lot of that stuff they can do remotely too.
So, But
But anyway,
so that's a
this
good
is-
point there. And things like the motor fuel increase, I know we had that identified as a $10,000
Holiday
increase.
right now is at $319.
But this was actual, right. And I know, we all know rates increase or decrease, but the fact was, we looked at our actual expenditures for fuels, and this was where we were below for several years. It wasn't just a one-time, we think gas prices are high now, they'll be high next year. It was actual usage is where
And
we
it's
were.
really, it's the snow removal.
Yeah.
And how would you estimate, I mean, if we look back at 2012, basically for that one, we definitely looked at the previous years and where we had been and where,
And those are just examples, so I agree with Dale. I mean, it's about setting the number that the council's comfortable with, because we've, like I said, we've had several budget workshops on this, and I think you guys are ready to move forward, and or Dolly had her own comments, so I'll stop there.
Yeah, because like looking at the fuels request, if you're able to cut that, that calls into question the increase, you know, and so that makes sense.
you know, and I think too, once we get more actual for 2013 under our belt, as the months go on, I think we get a clearer picture maybe of what was happening, what's going on. You know, like the
2014.
2014, when we get more months, we kind of have a better idea of what happened during the year and what's going on. You know, the big one for the repairs and maintenance, that was the snow removal, and that was the purchase of the salt and sand. That's what the large increase is there. If we kind of look through just a couple of other Dale's, like bigger items, you know, we discussed the 10,500. If we go to the miscellaneous request, the 49,000, when we look at the budget, it's actually a decrease from the original adopted budget for 2013. And those are some of the items that we've already talked about, like included in the 172,000 includes the Mississippi River Walk, walkable initiatives. So some of those are already being talked about in those items, so just as long as we don't double up on them when we're talking about them.
Mr. Pritchett, any more comments? And then we'll move to Dolly, and then I have one, and then we're gonna see if we can.
You know, in looking at a lot of this, I agree with a lot of what we're looking at. One thing that I would like to change is where we're looking at the matching grant. You know, cutting that completely, because to me it almost seems like you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. When we look at how much money that brings in, yeah, that money is sometimes going to be earmarked towards special projects, but I would be kind of uncomfortable with cutting that all the way down. You know, I know that we can sometimes dip into the general fund, I believe, if something comes up, but it would be nice to keep some funds there. You know, I was thinking like cut it in half, cut it to $750, something like that.
Okay?
Okay.
Dolly?
I didn't want to cut any of it out of there, but actually I wanted to increase that a bit because I know 14.5 won't go very far. I need an explanation, and I think Dave is this, and I don't want to speak for him, but
Yeah, that was that
if
one.
You can explain the paragraph in regards to the $50,000 transfer from general fund a little bit better, I guess, just for clarification for me
So,
to understand.
I just want to make sure we're talking about the same. There's a
Other budget adjustments, the third bullet point, which is also, the wording is similar to the other page we're talking about PHRA.
Fourth bullet point.
Oh, yeah, oh, this one.
Yep.
So proposed $50,000 transfer from the general fund to fund future capital needs in the preliminary budget. So we talked about that we need to start saving for things so we don't have to issue equipment certificates, for example. And so there was $50,000 in the preliminary budget, and there really wasn't clear direction on where to go with that. And so the proposed amount cut it in half to $25,000. You know, I kind of went into to discuss the capital projects, where we just allocated about $40,000 to do an engineering study for the water tower, and then we also took $21,000 out of there. So So I'm just giving you information that leaves about $17,000 for future equipment that if we would need to purchase out of that fund.
Would the salt sand building be considered equipment or,
Capital improvement item.
And that's kind of what this fund has been used for previously. We spent $100 and some thousand out of it to repair the wall of City Hall. So it could be used for equipment and buildings.
okay, well, I guess the only reason I'm saying is I thought that we were mandated to have a salt and sand covering of the sorts, and I don't know where this falls into our budget.
That's under our MS4 guidelines as far as protecting waters and wellheads. That's the engineering report that's required for all cities of a certain size. And it's a recommendation.
It's not a mandate at this point. It's
It was not a
strong
mandate, it was a
recommendation.
very strong
I
recommendation.
can't believe storing salt outside in the elements is a good idea.
There are benefits also to it. I mean, it helps reduce the amount of runoff or
Sure.
not, of breakdown of salt, so it does last a little bit longer,
But we don't have anything saved for that, and by taking that out of there, we're just, again, removing any funds that we could have potentially for that particular building.
right.
All right,
That is part of the CIP question that will
Yep.
be on the ballot in November, just so you know that.
all right.
as well.
I had one question, you brought that up, and that's actually where I have the question, is that third bullet point, when it talks about the initiative
Right.
foundation. It says, however, since the EDA is not considered part of the city's operating funds, if the council decided not to fund any of these items, the EDA fund would have excess revenues over expenditures?
So what we are looking at, when we're looking at this $3 million right here, we're talking the working funds. We're talking the general, public safety, street and sewer, and parks department only. So anything, there was the line that we had the working funds, and then we had all the other funds that are down below. So when we change something down below, unless we're changing the amount we levy, we're not really affecting this $1.3 million.
Chip had the same question, so the answer I was the best able to explain it to him is we max out our EDA levy portion of the general levy, and if you back that out, then you won't be increasing reserves.
So if you choose, right now, the maximum that we can levy is a certain percentage of the previous tax value, which I think is $114,000 off the top of my head. If you say we don't want to levy the maximum for the EDA, we only want to give them $110,000, then we have $2,000 more revenue. But by cutting an expense, it doesn't help us balance our operating general fund levy, because that levy for the EDA has to be used for economic development.
An argument that's been made, or that I've heard throughout the months of discussion, is we could eliminate the EDA and still have an EDA levy. As long as the council became the EDA, which would be legal, and the funds were used for EDA, which theoretically, but you'd be spending a lot of the same money anyway, because part of your salary is.
Correct. Part of a substantial portion of mine and several others is
Yep.
part of that.
I don't know where that becomes a win.
Right. Because we don't pay the EDA members
Right.
anything, so there's no savings in salary
Yep.
currently
Be increasing workload.
for the council
Yep.
members.
And city staff too, isn't it?
Well, we're already part of the EDA, and so.
But if we shift the whole load over, is what I'm just saying.
I'm not sure that there would be a substantial changeover, but the benefit of an EDA is the fact that you're bringing in extra individuals that are concentrating on that, and we've talked about making some substantial improvements there for their activity and making them more involved, getting them more involved. They want to be more involved, and right now we haven't been able to do so.
There hasn't been a whole lot of economic development, but that's, I don't know as much.
6 years, it's been tough.
It's more circumstances than.
And I think too that with the EDA levy, since that levy would have to be specific for economic development, we would still want to track it in a special revenue fund.
Yep.
And therefore it would be outside of the working fund
So it
levy.
really
So
wouldn't gain us much.
I would think it would maybe hurt us rather than help us in many different ways.
Yeah.
The other thing too, and Connie brought it up, but we did identify dollars in there for the park capital. We did cut almost $90,000, but there is $50,000 for the roof. If you recall, though, you're doing some of the work this year. That's the repairing the roof. That contract's been signed. I'm not sure the timelines to get that work done, but the remaining $50,000 was for the insulation. Again, that's another one of those, we don't know the dollar amount on that one, but we are going out to obtain quotes and looking at that, and that's where Dolly talked about the structural versus non-structural foam insulation, if you remember our last P&F meeting, and so.
Oh, it's like having a structural engineer on it.
So are we decided, well, I know we have, okay, ultimately, I know that once we've decided on a preliminary, we can't increase it after we've decided on, but we can always decrease it. So my question would be, are we completely eliminating the credit card equipment for the city?
I
mean,
did
is that
meet
kind of-
with somebody from Bremer,
Mhm.
and it was, you know, it might be a couple $100.
Okay.
You know, they had some, but we need to do some research. We would need
Okay.
some upfront costs, like some
Minimal.
swipers and that kind of
Okay.
stuff, but, and it might be something that we can piggyback with VPU. So additional research needs to be done. The $5,000 was, based on that meeting, was high,
Okay.
but, you know, something that we can continue to research. I just didn't have any idea what a swiper would cost. And really, when we went online, it varied from, you know, to nothing to a couple $1,000s per swiper. And it also depends on how we hook it in with our Encode. If we just do journal entries, or if we want it to connect. If we want it to connect directly to our accounting software, then it is going to be more money.
And I know that's a small ticket item. I was just going down the line here. And I have to ask you specifically, how important is it to have exactly 2 squad cars this year as opposed to 1 this year and 3 the following? And the only reason I ask is I want to come back to you because I don't know in regards to our industrial park forward, and I know it's 2 totally different things compared to our loans that we have compared to equipment that, you know, we're looking at, that would be paid for this upcoming year. It's a pretty substantial chunk of money. 2018. Okay. All right. Never
Sorry.
mind. I was thinking it was.
I jumped in front of you, Courtney.
It's okay.
Yeah, but that
I was thinking of my
explains
answer.
it. I'd like to still hear your answer, but I guess that was one of the you know, your overall vehicles and the status of them and the
Yeah.
importance of them. And I know you're going to play hard for it. I was just a question I had.
And it's a really good question, and we're kind of in an interesting predicament because when the budget started to tank and we had all squad cars eliminated, I got to keep my years straight here, from 2012, we had personnel shortage at the end of 2011. So we bought 2 new squad cars at the beginning of 2011, got like the last 2 old style Crown Victorias at the end of 2011, no squad cars in 2012. So the problem with that is we bought 4 squad cars in a relatively short period of time that now have been used quite heavily since then. So to not pick 2 of those cars to replace and only replace 1 puts us in a 3-car replacement need
The
the following year. So I mean, if we predict that the budgets would be better, could we make do? Yeah, but would we rather not do that? Yes.
And then the ultimate, and if I may just a little bit there, but so if we only
That's
buy
what we're
1
doing here.
and then have 3 the following year, you're still short another $90,000. Is what I'm saying. You still have to make up the difference for, instead of just $45,000, now you're at $135,000.
Because
So
you're
it
still
doesn't-
replacing.
Because you're
Right.
still the same number, and all you're, I think Mr. Bevins, you used the word kicking, the phrase kicking the can down the road,
I have.
so.
Okay. Well, and I provided some of my other thoughts, and I guess I don't know if we want to discuss any of them or if that's even worth discussing. But, or if I need to elaborate on them as to specific ideas as to the fire department, the comprehensive plan, the city council health insurance. And the only reason I brought that up was only because and because of the study that was done, and there's such vast differences in overall premiums that the city pays, and knowing that we could potentially go up 20% in health insurance premiums for all of staff. I guess I was just looking at trying to get a fixed number as opposed to going with the risk of everybody jumping on for health insurance and then those premiums all affecting the overall premium rate. So that was the reason I brought that up. And I know we talked a little bit about the safety committees being formed again immediately, only because I know that'll help our workman's comp rate to decrease with the hopes that it does.
First meeting's tomorrow, so I'm going to be ready for elections.
IT staff, and I appreciate, Mr. Parks, that you investigated on something else. I would like to know what actually would be included in that IT assistance from CTC or 7, whatever the other place is, Sigma. I don't know that would, is it just for IT assistance with our departments? Is it building a website? Is it,
I guess I
those
can't
things?
answer that.
Okay.
I'm guessing that they would be able to do all of those.
Okay. With that being said,
But there has to be more discussion.
Sure. I wouldn't want
Administrative.
to eliminate what we've discussed previously until we know more about that particular. So the budget that, we had to set aside or talked about for an IT person, I would like to leave it alone until we find out more about that. And I know that I had addressed the library fund in there. I know that's kind of more a response I'm sure that Mary will have to answer. And I only assume that we're going to be increasing the parking fees. I don't know if that's direction from council that needs to be done, or if that...
Well, and one thing here, you mentioned the cost of maintenance, which is the snow plowing, which
Right.
we currently don't cover. But then you said future reconstruction, which is a concept that we haven't put any dollars in for that type of situation.
And is the parking lot fund a budget?
Oh, okay.
Oh, yes, it is, the parking fund. I think that's something that we look at after we adopt the budget. Again, it wouldn't affect our operating budgets.
Okay.
It would be one of those below the line. And
Okay.
so, by increasing that, it would just maintain the fund.
Okay.
Help
Sure.
us for those future replacements.
Sure.
Your suggestion is to make sure we include both of those
Correct.
fees.
Yes. And then, of course, increasing the fees or increased fees. I'm on board too with rejecting the increased fees to PLADEC and to the Airport Commission. Also, the licensing, and I know we talked a little bit about that too, for building remodeling. But one of the things that was really surprised me, and I know it kind of surprised Connie too, was increasing. I'd like to look at animal control, and not that it sounds like it's a little issue, but it's a $70,000 annual, expense to the city. And I would really like to look at what we can do to adjust that, because it's pretty substantial. When we look here at trying to save $200,000 to get it to a certain level, I mean, there's a lot of money sitting here as far as increasing or decreasing or taking away, minimizing, and what have you. So.
And then the last item you talked about was the
Oh,
water
it's
tower?
our water tower. Yep, I forgot. It's on the next page. Yeah, we have no money set aside for the water tower for what we're planning on doing. I guess I don't know if the plan is to keep it, move forward with it, fix it, tear it down. But if we don't budget for it, I mean, obviously then we've answered our own question, because it'll just eventually fall down. I mean, in time.
But even so, we don't have any dollars even to
No,
budget
nothing set aside.
for demolition of it.
Correct.
I mean, that's one of the quotes
Right.
that we're asking for them, our estimates.
So that was my 2 cents.
Well, but you didn't mention the HIA, or you didn't talk about those
HIA.
comprehensive
Oh,
plans?
yeah,
On the first page, you mentioned
Yeah.
those items, or did you want to talk about those more?
Well, again, that's one that, yes.
Didn't you call me? and
I
indicate
did,
that the
and I
county was doing
haven't,
something on
yes,
with the sheet?
but Mark was gonna talk with them last week, and it fell apart last week. He's gonna try to talk to them today. So I would be talking out of turn if I talked about anything about this. All I know is it's a program out there that we could, it could help benefit the city in paying for some of the things such as the Riverwalk project or the bike walkable projects within our city.
And what that email talked about, the SHIP coordinator, I think at the county level, and Dale might be more familiar with that
Okay.
than I might, because the states funded them to help cities and counties and schools.
And they're going a different route now. They're working with St. Joe's,
Okay.
and they have some of the same concepts, but it's the county and St. Joe's is working hand in hand. I think right now they're in a planning stage, so I don't believe that they are ready to move forward with.
But I think this
Okay.
plan talked about the idea that it would coordinate with our walkable, bikeable, and that's why Mark was gonna jump on board.
And she seemed pretty excited about it too in regards to working with Brainerd in regards to that. But my concern is by eliminating any money that we would apply towards our comprehensive plan, it might eliminate any potential of them wanting to work with us. And I look at that as kind of like I look at the grant fund matching. That if we've got nothing set aside to implement an HIA, then they might as well just keep looking at a different city. So I wanted to incorporate that because I don't think that our comprehensive plan needs to be rewritten. I think it just needs to be modified and to include something in regards to if this is something that could help us continue to move forward to obtain or achieve our goals of our strategic plan, which, obviously that's what I'm trying to keep, and I think we all are, keep in the forefront of our mind as to when we do this budget, because if we continue to eliminate everything, then why even have a strategic plan? So I don't necessarily want to eliminate all $75,000 out of that comprehensive plan update. And I don't have a dollar amount. I guess if I was going to throw something at it, I would like to at least keep 25 in there. Just to show goodwill that if this is a project that we could continue to move forward with, then it's something.
So you're saying to reduce it
to 25.
to 25, so reduce by 50,000. I think you mentioned
The matching grants at the bottom.
the matching grants here.
Yeah.
In the strategic initiatives, we talked about that there was 70,000, maybe we bring it down to only 20,000 in there for the walkable, bikeable grant phase 2. The fund balance policy from 100,000 to 50,000. I think in the long scheme of things, fund balance, we're hearing our bond rating for BPU. We talked about reducing the capital fund transfer from 50,000 to 25,000. I mean, they're all small amounts
Right.
in the whole scheme of things, but at least it's a start.
I think there's two things to look at here. Is one, if we don't plan for the future, we're not going to go anywhere. I mean, we do have to start putting some of that aside. I think the other thing too is at this stage, we can always reduce it. I mean, if we don't make a recommendation with those things in now, we can't go back and say, boy, I really wish we had that money if the healthcare comes in lower, or if we have any other.
Which if they do, I mean, then you can put some of those stuff back in there, or you could say, this is very important, so we find something else to cut someplace else down the road, or increase revenue some other way. I mean, that's what we do between now and the end of the year is finalize and go back and forth, so.
It's my 2 cents.
Excellent. Mr. Pritchett, anything else?
Those were echoed a lot of the things that I had. So.
Okay.
I don't know about
Can I
that.
take a minute?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because
Please.
I looked at tonight's project completely different than the two of you.
Okay.
You two looked at it, it appears to me, from another budget workshop. 25,000 here, 30,000 there. And I looked at it, we did that last Monday, and now I'm looking at, it's time to play the game. It's time to define the boundaries. It's time to set the bar of what we're gonna be doing. And I didn't look at any of these numbers
Okay.
as I did before. I only looked at this number, which on this sheet in our packet is
Percentage.
5,000, no, well, the levy amount. Because we actually don't set a percentage, we set a levy dollar figure. And if we set a levy dollar figure of $5,017,080, it's a 12.66% increase. And for the next 90 days, we can pound the living hell out of each other over $5,000 here, the water tower. One thing that you brought up, Donnie, and I have to commend your courage. Never have we discussed personnel until you brought up the fire department. Not suggesting I agree with it, but there is an opportunity. That is the largest single item in our budget. And in years past, not only have we talked about certain positions as being reduced, but we also have not had them. We have spent many, many, many years not having a park director. I'm not suggesting that Mr. Saylor is not worth every penny. But if you don't know where the field is and what game we're playing, how can you have that discussion? Do we want to have there is a council member who has called me and said, we need to keep this at 0%. I don't mean to pick on that. That's a legitimate argument. We need to keep this. We had huge increase last year. So I looked at it more from the percentage of, can we come out of here, the three of us, with a consensus on a levy? Because that's the one thing that we have to produce to the county, correct? Is that who gets this?
That's the county auditor.
The county auditor is gonna say, what's the dollar? And as we've all discussed, it can come down, but it can't go up.
Right.
I'm afraid the individual thing, and I'm also afraid if we're gonna do a 0%, and I don't know how you two are thinking, there's gonna be some personnel cuts. I don't see how we can do 0%. I think we could probably do something less than 12 without any personnel cuts, but I don't think we can do 0. And I'm not suggesting that we don't want to do personnel cuts. I'm just suggesting that if we can come up to offer the council a levy dollar amount, I think we'll have done our job. Not that the three of us will agree, but we got 20 minutes to try. And that's where I looked at this. So it was, I may not say, okay, $50,000 set aside for future capital improvements. I supported that in the very first meeting. I thought, boy, we really cut ourselves short, because what if something breaks? I would be willing to bet, I could go out on a limb here and say this heating and ventilation system may not work up until the general election. And then there's all kinds of stuff that has to happen to make that, even if that passes, to make that into usable money, into a heating and ventilation system that's fixed. So so Jeff Alsuther doesn't have to sleep on this table to make sure that that he twist ties the thing together to make it run. But on the rest of the question, so I looked at it different than you guys, and I asked, the you can go down thing. And I've been here a few times, and it doesn't normally happen. And often, and you use these words, and I kind of cringed when you did. Well, if we come up lower, let's say if we come up lower on the health insurance increase, we can always spend that over here. But and the reason I kind of crinkled a little bit is because I have this conservative thing in my brain that says it's not our money. We can't just get as much as we can and then spend it all because we have it. There has to be some stewardship involved here of how big was our increase last year? It was big.
12%.
12%. If you do it again, well, it's pretty easy to balance the budget at those kind of increases. Can we do less? And can we set a line that we can live with that's reasonable? Imagine if you had to go back to every single one of your constituents and ask for the money. Stand at their door and say, this is what we took from you last year, now this is what we need to take this year. There's some people that'd be really hard to do. And I think we owe it to them to, you also got to provide the best possible product. If that means saving the water tower, and to some people it would mean that's what that means. Above everything. Until their house catches fire or until somebody breaks in their house. And other people, you've read it in the paper, let it go. The $40,000 we're spending on investigation and feasibility is a waste. So I looked at this and I talked to and there was some dissension here just amongst the three of us. You see 12%. I thought, and I just picked a number that I thought was reasonable, and it doesn't include every expenditure. It just is a levy number, and I picked 8%. And if you flip the page in Dale's memo, that's about where he comes out to, and it doesn't address every question under the planet of what we're going to spend that on. It just says this is where we're going to say enough. This is where I can turn to somebody who voted for me and explain why we had to do this, why we needed squad cars. Good explanation, good question. Why do we need to spend money on IT? Chip Dorkening had made a great, passionate plea, but Dale Parks and our city administrator came up with ideas that maybe we don't need to add a person. So adding a person, having sat in for many years as council president in the union negotiations, creates a whole new dynamic. It's virtually impossible to get rid of somebody once you, and I don't mean that we would want to, but when the union negotiation dynamics is a world you're familiar with. I don't think you are. Maybe you are. I
Never
don't
been
know.
part of a union.
Yeah, me neither. But it's a different dynamic, and it's not an easy thing to do, and it's an expectation. There's expectations that there's raises every year. And we've had many years where there hasn't been. But I don't mean to make a. I asked Connie, what would an 8% be, and she we gave me the number $4,809,765. Now I don't know. That's roughly $200,000 that which she put up there, and I don't know if we can find it or not. But I think I don't think I can justify to either of you where I came up with that number.
Well, I guess that would have been my question, is
Yeah.
how do you come up with the number? And the only reason I ask is, these are non-static items, insurance increases,
Yep.
work-com increases,
Yep.
fuel, equipment repairs, building repairs.
Yep.
How do you come up with the magic number of 8%? And, unless you do break it down. So
Yeah.
it was.
I think we can come up with $200,000, and I could, and it might require, for budgeting purposes, reducing some of those things, like the $50,000 set aside to zero. Doesn't mean it can't come back in, but it might mean.
It does mean it.
I'm trying to pick the smallest amount I can think we can target, and I don't want to go over because I think we can come under it. And I'm trying to not take the easy way out. I'm trying to say this is where we're gonna draw the line in the sand. And I'm hoping that next year it'll go down to 4.
Okay, but so, can I
Yeah.
ask the question? All right,
Yeah.
so if we're gonna just use those items up there, then what I've asked for just is for nothing. I mean, so, not that, but what I'm proposing in regard to the fire department, or what I'm proposing in regard to the comprehensive plan, or the city council health insurance, or as I go down this list, the library fund, to cut $25,000, I don't see that up there. But that could be part of
It
your
absolutely could.
8%. So really what we need to decide is, what does everybody feel comfortable with? Pick a number out of the air and then make the numbers work.
That's exactly right. Well, you just said it, and but on the other side of the coin, we have an obligation to do that.
Oh, I understand.
Yeah, we have to do it as a council, and I think it's on our agenda so we can take the time to make, as we have tonight, and go upstairs and make a legitimate recommendation as to what the three of us can hit. Yes, you're absolutely right. It is a little bit of kind of what happens when you go over budget at the end of the year in 2015.
We use fund balance and then we have our strategic initiative.
Pardon?
I mean, we use fund balance and then we go further away from our strategic initiative of having.
That's what I.
Or we don't pay some bills, but they're still there.
That really will work.
But that's really only a cash flow solution.
But if I can just clarify, I mean, we didn't get your memo till Wednesday or Thursday morning, so I mean, we couldn't incorporate some of them and we hadn't had full discussions on it. But that gets back to the point about, we won't get hard numbers for insurance for quite some time yet, or relatively soon. And there's maybe some other things that we'll get some more hard numbers, but I think what you're saying is based upon the experiences of council and staff is set the number, we'll work within those numbers based upon the parameters that we've been working on for the last several months to finalize the budget. And then as we're going through for the next 2 months before we'll have one more, I think you were talking about, we were talking about, last year was like the end of October, but we'll probably shoot for after the election to kind of maybe see where we're at with council seats, and then have another work session that night, and then this city council will adopt the budget no matter what, but we'll have good direction by that time.
I just have two things to say, and I agree a lot with most of what you said. One, there is no easy way out. You know, you're saying taking the easy way. None of them. None of the routes are
Well,
easy.
raise the levy.
And I have to say, well, even that's not an easy way out.
Nope.
I have to say that you know, okay, based on past practices, it's been your experience that if we set the levy at 12% and it comes in, you know, we never reduce it. I personally have a hard time saying that I'm going to base my decision on what other people did before me and not me.
Understood?
I mean, I kind of look at this, I would rather set it at a 10 or a 12 and come in at 7, because I have no problems if you give me something that's reasonable to cut to bring it down, because I can see that. And a lot of my reasoning behind that is a lot of what Dolly was saying too, is a lot of these are costs, and you know, they're set that we have to pay them. They're not static because the suckers are going up. But that's how I see it. So I mean, 8%, I would be a little hesitant to say 8, but who knows? In the end, it might come down even lower. And so, you know, I'm not saying if we've got it, spend it. But I want to make sure that we cover what we have to spend in some of these. And, you know, I don't think any of this is fluff the way most people define fluff.
No.
I
So,
agree with you 100%. I can't find anything wrong with your argument, except for I think we can hit 8%. And I think you work harder when you have, that's the,
oh, I see what you're
That's
saying.
the ball.
And there's some people that do that. I'm just saying, you know, I don't know if I would be totally comfortable with
I
saying
understand.
it. So, all right.
well, Shelley,
Yes, sir?
what, you got a comment or you want to make a motion?
Well, if I'm making the motion, then
What do you do?
am I actually putting a percentage in here?
No, you need a levy dollar.
We
A
can
levy
convert, yeah,
dollar.
percentage or.
Sure, yeah, you can do
give us a
percentage.
percentage.
You can do
we'll
the percentage.
Figure that number.
Yeah, they'll do a dollar between now and then.
I'm gonna compromise, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna make the motion for, well, I won't do the motion, we'll do 10%.
I'll do the
Like
motion.
the dollar,
Dave will
what,
do the motion.
dollar
I'll do the
amount.
motion.
Okay,
She's
so
gonna put the
a
dollar
10%
Mhm.
on that would be $445,000 over last year. So the levy then would be $4,898,835.
Write that down, Dave, because I'm going to have you make the motion.
All right.
Okay?
You want to give me a second? Let me just.
4 votes and it's done, and I'm not going to be one of them.
That's fine.
Yep, I think it's great.
It would be a matter of
8, 5. We're rounding up.
setting it
That's a
at
draft
5 and
resolution
shooting for 8,
even.
I guess is
Okay.
how I look at it. But if we set it too low and can't find what to
I know, you get in trouble.
And what the
That's
court
our-
uses the preliminary levy for is for the tax statements that go out in November.
Yeah, those deals. And I really am, I'm really grateful that that this committee has come up with it.
Here's the draft resolution.
And who knows what's going to happen up there, but we came up with something. And we talked, and we didn't just pick it out of the air, we've been talking about it for half an hour.
There's a draft resolution, you put in the 8%, instead of 8%, make it 10%, and then put the new, it's 4, 8, 9, 8.
Oh, you rounded up?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
4898, no, you need the exact number.
Yeah.
Okay. Move that we set the levy for 20,
You can just say 10%
10%
increase,
increase
okay?
Second.
Per the draft resolution.
Okay.
Are you okay with that?
per the draft resolution. You need anything?
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
I will oppose. Okay, and what was that number again? 4898
835.
835. Thank you, and thank you again, both of you guys. This
That
is
will be coming.
this is not easy,
No.
especially when you're, well, anyway. There is some good news. I mean, in the economics, right? I
Yes.
don't know how much of that we
Yes.
can share, or is gonna be shared tonight, but things are happening.
Do you think we want this up for the council meeting? Do you think that they'll want to be discussion?
I would
on
have
this?
it,
Or
just
have
in
it
case, it'd be
available?
better to have it available in case somebody does want to see it rather
I'm
than.
hoping Mr. Parks will look to us for a motion, and we will go with a motion on the levy amount. Because if we spend the time that, I mean, part of the reason I think it was great to have it in this committee is it gave us a chance to kind of rehash a little bit about where we're at. On the other side of the coin, if we turn this into a budget meeting, not a preliminary levy discussion, it could be a long night. And I'm not saying that's bad, that's Mr. Parks' choice. But he's, you know, I let it go because there was some good discussion and we had the time.
We still have a couple
Now,
items.
we got 5 minutes, we gotta go. Yes, sir. Mr. McQuiston, Chief McQuiston, you have anything to add on where are we here now?
Number 4.
Yeah, number 4.
Authorization to purchase new
Oh, no,
CSO.
we actually have till 7:30.
We do tonight, but
Yeah.
we've got to get ready upstairs,
Yeah.
so.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Just
Good evening.
quick update on the vehicle thing. I had some discussion with Connie, and I just want to maybe bring a little more accuracy to these numbers. Connie's telling me that the balance in the capital isn't actually 13,000; it's about 8,000. So although we were $13,000 under what we had requested and were authorized to spend on police vehicles, apparently there was some overages in other areas that cut into the city's capital, I guess. So
That's working together.
Yes.
sure, as long as what comes around goes around in the future. So we anticipate receiving, all our vehicles have been sold. It's just the public surplus pays on $30 or 30-day rotation. So we'll get that money in, and her and I do agree that there's probably $30,000 there.
So it was 5 less than what you.
Right.
Okay.
So, and I'm pretty confident that we can get a new vehicle if I, review some of these bids and see what else comes in and equip it and do all the other fees for $30,000. So that's what I would be asked for, is authorization to spend not more than
Not
$30,000.
more than 30,000.
Right.
Can I make that
Any
motion?
question? You can.
I would make that motion.
Second.
All right. I approve. Any further questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Mr. Chief McQuiston,
Thank you.
anything else on the two?
No, I think they're pretty self-explanatory. The CSO thing happens from time to time because
Yep.
they move on to other jobs, and so this is pretty standard. One gives us their notice.
You're doing too good a job with these CSOs.
Yeah, but that's what our expectations are.
Yeah.
They're most of them going to school for law enforcement, and we'd like to see them that's in their best interest. So we would ask that we accept CSO Taylor's resignation and give us authorization to replace her.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And lastly, the resignation of the temporary records, CSO temporary records management technician Caitlin Robinson, effective September 19th, to accept with regret. Any questions on that?
No, just keep in mind that actually we had authorization to replace this
Right.
position a long time ago. We've just kind of been buying time with Caitlin, and so she finally is going to move on to other employment. So we would just ask that, her resignation is accepted at this time. We're going to go through the process, and then I'll come back with a name at that time and ask for authorization to hire her at a later date.
Perfect. Any other questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the request?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Pat, anything else we need to add?
Thank you, no, sir.
Okay. You looked good in I thought it was Savannah Cole for a second. Mr. Mayor, before we adjourn, anything you want to add?
The only thing is, I've got two gentlemen that I'd like to ask a question of. If they got...
In this room?
Yes. Mr. Willett, the new superintendent, did you get my emails about him wanting to meet with us?
Earl?
Wasn't that last week, sir?
Yeah?
Yep, I thought so.
Oh, okay, but I mean, nobody's responded back to anybody, and so I got a email asking if you heard anything, and I haven't, and so there was a date of, I think, three dates and times, and
Was there dates on what we received? I don't know if Janet replied back to us with the potential dates. I'll have to look at that. I thought it was just she was going to...
she had given us three dates with times to see if one of those would be acceptable for him to meet with our administrator and our police chief.
That's why I thought we had said it, but I don't recall right now off the top of my head. I'll look at the emails.
Yeah,
In about 15 minutes. I'll
double
look at
check
it.
it too.
Anyway, so if you could either get back to me or to her, and I'll be happy to resend it
Okay.
if you'd like.
Anything for us?